My name is Paul Thomas, and the work is about trying to explore at a nano level the idea of touch. Like what happens when we touch another surface or another object, how much of us becomes part of the world around us. So I've been trying to find ways to visualize and explore that. And I used an atomic force microscope to try and explore the space between skin and, in this case, gold, following the concept of Midas, who turned everything through his touch into gold. And also that nanotechnology then leads you to the idea that if atoms are being explored and manipulated, that they can recreate matter. And a guy called Eric Drexler wrote about the concept of grey goo, which is where semi-autonomous nanobots start to develop, and they develop a relationship with the world around them, where they deterritorialize everything by stripping matter down, and it all becomes grey goo. So that means the world just falls and melts. And so people became very scared of this concept, and the skin cell, which is a 3D model of a skin cell taken with an AFM, is reproduced as a graphic image, and where these semi-autonomous little nanobots are eating away the image and translating it into gold. So they use the energy from the color within the images, the red, green and blue, and replace it with gold. Great.
It's on this, it's called Midas, and it's a kind of plate of gold.
Basically, I had to grow the skin cell, which I did at Symbiotica in Perth in Western Australia, where I'm from. And once the skin cell was grown, I then used a gold-coated cantilever, which is, instead of optics, the microscope doesn't use an optical microscope. It uses a little membrane cantilever that touches very gently the skin cell. And a laser beam bounces off the top of it onto a photodiode, which that information is then recorded and then constructs the image from that data. So it's a fairly complex process, but it's really simple. It's like a gramophone needle bouncing up and you hear the record. It roughly does that, but like the gramophone needle records a sound, this gets a laser light that would bounce off the top and then gets recorded. So that's how the image is recorded. And the sound that you hear when it's played is the actual sound of atoms vibrating when the cantilever touches them. So when the cantilever touches the cell and rests on the cell, it can actually record about 100 atoms vibration. So that's what the sound is. So the sound's trying to get you into that kind of way of actually what happens at that moment of contact. I think that the instrument like the Atomic Force Microscope, which uses touch as a vehicle for construction of an image, takes us away from an oculocentric view of the world, and also gets us to question the way that an image is constructed via data, in other words, the way our world is constructed via touch. So in some ways it starts to break down the barriers between a perspectival understanding, even though these images are constructed through a Cartesian form of expression. But it starts to make us aware that our senses are going to play maybe a much more vital role in the understanding of ourselves in relationship to a digital age. And so I'm interested in this, and I'm also interested in the way that our bodies and the interface that our bodies have with the world is being deterritorialized by nanotechnology, and the construction of almost an immune system that needs to be developed in relationship to ourselves in connection with the outer world. In other words, where does our body now end at a nano level? You know, where does our body actually physically exist? If we were to think of each organ as a swirling mass of atoms, each organ communicating via vibration to each other, then where does this actually stop, and how does this reshape our body? So what's the shape of the body going to be in the future, and how are we going to protect ourselves from other nanoparticles? So it's our immunity, which follows on a lot of science fiction writing about the deterritorialization of the body and so on, that I'm interested in. I was hoping that the sound as a palpable experience, which would need much more powerful speakers because a lot of it's subsonic, the sound of the atoms, would give you maybe a more identifiable feeling with a sonic understanding or a sonic spatialization. Also the texture of the work as well. So I don't know if I can answer that, because I think it's trying to get back to a pre-perspectival position, and I think that there needs to be a rupture to break the perspectivalism, and I'm not sure, but I think nano is maybe a way that's going to start to make us think about this on a much broader level. And that's where in relationship to going below the cellular level, I think that's a really important, because the cellular level seems to have a ceiling, and now we're going below that ceiling, and it's important the incorporation of these two elements together.